Yes, it's working. You're muted.
Oh man, everything is going wrong. Yeah, I'm sorry for that, for all this trouble. I finally started the recording. I just, maybe for the viewers, this is a regular Y community meeting, and I thought today maybe because Yousef created a really nice extension to YJS basically, or like some kind of wrapper around it, I wanted to share this with more folks because I think his work is really something that makes YJS usable and that makes it much more accessible to many more users. So here we go, Yousef, shoot.
Nice. Thanks, thanks, Kevin. Thank you so much. Of course, YJS is already usable, but indeed one of the main goals was to make it more accessible to more people, and not just for the collaborative text editing, but really to power any rich application with a YJS store. So I developed this open source library. It's called SyncedStore. And the idea is it makes it really easy to access and modify shared objects. So it makes it easy to build real-time collaborative applications that can be like local first, so they can work offline, and then if another user comes online, everything gets synced with that user, and you have like a multiplayer application. So with YJS as the technology that it's possible to build something like that underneath, but it's kind of like complicated if you want to put it into a React or a Vue application, which is why I developed this library to make that as simple as possible. So it was really also an exercise for me. Okay, what would the most easy way to build a simple collaborative application look like, and what would the library to make that easy look like? So here we go. This is the documentation. So there's an introduction, and actually it might be nice to jump straight into one of the examples, as was mentioned here as well. So last week I worked quite a bit on the documentation. And I figured, okay, what's the easiest or the best way to really demonstrate collaborative application is to really have live demos that are editable, and where you have a side-by-side window of so-called two users. So what you see here is the code that uses SyncedStore. So this is the React example. And then below it's live, it shows the result of this code. So if I change this, then the code, the application also updates.
Did you like? I'm sorry, but did you write this yourself? This seems super useful.
I am actually working on a project where I'm building something similar to this, but for now I'm using Code Sandbox. So if you go click this button, it opens up a Code Sandbox. So you can explore it further, and simply the same.
Got it. So these are basically 3 different Code Sandbox iframes.
They yeah, pretty much. And there is a library that you can use to embed them. And
cool.
of course something breaks, but
of course.
Well, Variant Code Sandbox is not working at the moment. But here it's working, so that's good. So there's some wrapping around it to make it work in this documentation website. So what you see on the left, it's a super exciting, so the previews, indeed, that's 2 previews, super exciting to-do application. So you can keep track of all your to-dos. So I want to give a presentation. Here you go, and then you see it pop up on the left and on the right. Now, what's nice about having these previews is, of course, okay, having an application that works live might be okay. It's not trivial, but it's not super complicated to develop. If you basically you sync all the changes live to all the connected users. However, where it gets really interesting, which is where YJS and CRDTs, etc., of course, shine, is that it can be offline first, and that multiple users can edit things at the same time. regardless of whether they can immediately reach all their peers. Maybe that was a very complicated sentence for saying, okay, we can put one user online and one user offline. And if I add a to-do for user 1, and then add a to-do for user 2. Now, because user 2 is offline, of course, the data is not synced, so user 2 cannot send the to-do to user 1, and it can also not receive the to-do from user 1. But now I can put this preview online again, and it will sync the data back and forth. So now it's connected again. So this way you can simulate, okay, simulate really developing a collaborative application. I can check them off, etc.
Damn, that's sweet. Like, there are actually super few to-do app demos for YJS. Like, I just never came around building one. So finally, there's a to-do app. But no, this is super cool. And you do all of that using these synced types using React, right?
Yeah.
Is this actually React, or is this some kind of other abstraction?
This is React, but with a library that's used for reactive functional programming. So in React, you typically use something to manage your state. So either like use state for functional components. If your application gets more advanced, you can use Redux, or you can use a state management library like MobX. Underneath, this uses something which is similar to MobX. And I'll show you here how that actually works. The basic idea of if you're asking about state management, is that the component automatically re-renders when some of the underlying state that is being used by the component changes. So let's have a look what the code looks like. So first of all, how to set up the store. So the main function is SyncedStore. Note that this uses TypeScript, and with the SyncedStore, you basically say, okay, what does the shape of my shared data look like? Actually, in this example, we don't need the fragment, but it only has the to-dos, and the to-dos is something data that you want to share, and it's an array of. That's my phone going off. There you go. So it's an array of to-do items, which is either completed and has a string. There you go. Nice. That's the store, and that's the main store that we'll use later. And I can still get the store is basically the SyncedStore representation of a YJS doc. And I can still get the underlying YJS doc, and then I can pass it to a WebRTC provider, which is what does the syncing between the two things. But to be honest, only this line is needed to set up the store. And now I can use a React hook. Here we go again. I think we just found it's my girlfriend. I think we just found an apartment. And again.
I mean, if it's important, you can just get it.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
No worries. There we go. Okay, so we want to use that store, and then it's super simple React. So this is just basic React. We loop over the to-dos, and then every to-do we just show a list item, a checkbox where that's completed, and we show the title. That's it.
So from this perspective, these are just normal JSON data types, right?
Yeah. So it's actually a pity that let's try the code sandbox again, because everything supports TypeScript, so you would get code completion, stuff like that. So that would make it easy to show the data types. But in this window, there's no code completion. But let's see where this works. Or let's keep it loading.
And are these proxy data types? Like, is there a wrapper around it, or is this just JSON?
It is JSON, but it uses a JavaScript proxy to really see what's going on underneath.
Okay.
So, for example, state.todos. So this here is the input item, and what we do here is, okay, we say state.todos.push, and so this is pretty similar to a regular array, but it's actually it's a proxy for YJS array. But when we access it, it really behaves similar to a regular array. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's also the type that you get here. So I'm not exactly sure why this sandbox doesn't work, but hopefully let's see. Small bug. Never mind preview. But here you go. So
nice.
Now you have the state. You can see, okay, what's on the state. So there's a XML fragment, which we can use for different things. So for example, I have another example that shows TipTap editor or Prose Mirror editor, and we can use the fragment for that. And we have the to-dos, which is just the array.
So when you define a type in the store as fragment, you basically get back a YXML fragment, right?
Yeah.
And when you define it as a JSON object, you basically get back a proxy JSON object that internally uses the YJS data structures.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So for an object, you actually get a map. So or the other way around. So here now you can initialize things in 4 ways. So you can either put text on it, which would be a Y text. So that's when I change this to text, this will be a Y text. It can be an empty array, or it can be an empty object. So something like this. And with an object, with an array, I can just push items to it. And with an object, I can set any properties. I'll show this in a bit later. Maybe that makes sense. But now to-dos is just an array. And then we saw here, we go back. Yeah, so we see state.todos will now just give me an array of to-do items. So this works all typed, and I can say to-do dot completed, dot title. So it knows exactly the properties that it has. And even when I push something, it knows, okay, I need to push a to-do item. So if I would put completed hello here, it will give me a type error because that's not what's intended to put on that array. So yeah, this is basically it. You just do a push and you iterate over the items and you use the hook and everything works automatically. So there's no need to set up observers. There's no need to say like, okay, get array dot get map dot etc.
Yeah, I mean for React applications, using YJS is so elaborate because you need to create each type individually, and it's really hard to create nested structures using YJS on its own. And also React developers usually work with immutable data objects, right? They have a very specific way how they interact. So basically you only modify the document or the state of the application in the on-click handler, right? And then in the render part, you render the state, the immutable state.
Yep.
And now you basically created a wrapper around it so it can read YJS as JSON objects using proxies.
Yeah.
And also made it much easier to manipulate the YJS document by just using the JSON to manipulate it.
Yeah.
Does it support like all the methods of array? like splice and delete and maybe some. Yeah. Okay, that's really cool.
Yeah, if something is missing, I can add it, but I'm pretty sure it
Yeah.
supports both everything.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned a good point, by the way, about mutable data, immutable data in React. So most frameworks in React work with immutable data because this uses the reactive programming paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
So you use mutable data. So, but what happens when I click, when I check one off, it actually runs this handler. And it just sets to do dot completed equals not to do dot completed.
Okay.
Maybe the pure React way of doing something like this would be like, okay, set state, and then to do's, something like all the start to do's, and then, or let's make it easier. You have like a to do, you would say, okay, you would copy to do dot title and then complete it. It's actually also wrong. You would take the entire existing to do and you would say completed, not to do dot completed. And you would, because you'd work with immutable items, you often keep on copying things with reactive functional programming, so similar to MobX, that's not necessary. So you can just mutate the data. And I think it makes life a lot easier. And you really have, this single source of truth that you can both write and read.
So basically, when you manipulate the data, you call a proxy, and the proxy manipulates YJS. YJS fires an event that says something changed, and then this reactive style of programming, probably a few lines above, automatically calls the render function and re-renders because the state has changed, right? Here, use SyncedStore.
Yes, there's even a little bit, if we dive deep, there's, so it's 90% correct, what you're saying. However, there's one really neat trick, and it would be nice to have a demo for that. I don't think I have this at this moment. But indeed, this makes sure that it re-renders, but it only re-renders when some of the used data from the state has been modified. So let's say on the YJS document, I also store prose mirror document, for example. If that changes, and if this component doesn't use it, then this component doesn't re-render.
What? How does that work?
Yes, that's quite some magic. Once again, really designed to make life easier. It's because this object, this proxy, it knows what methods and what properties have been called on it.
What?
So because here you say state.todos, it knows, okay, this has been accessed. So whenever the Y array that is the internal representation of state.todos changes, then I need to re-render this component.
Nice.
Maybe I can think of a cool example for this. Does that make sense?
This is a really good example, right? Let's assume you have like a nested, if you have a nested to-do app, maybe each to-do item individually also can be manipulated. And for example, you update the text in one of the to-do items. You don't want to re-render the whole state. You just want to re-render this individual thing. And basically by using this pattern, you would only manipulate this one item that changed. And that is really cool. Is there some, like, this is common practice. I didn't know that. Like, this is really cool. Makes it so much easier to work with, nested data, right?
Yeah, actually, I might have an example for that. I can quickly look it up because I was having this discussion with someone who tested it as well. Find it.
Flavio is back. That's good.
There we go. I think actually something, maybe with the latest YJS update, we're having an issue loading it in Code Sandbox.
Okay, and the latest one.
Yeah, maybe I didn't test it yet, or it might be maybe in my project it's a bug.
Yeah. I mean, you could just revert to an older version, right?
Yeah, but I don't know quickly where this is being caused. Let me think. Maybe I can look into it later, and then I can always get back. So this is the basics. So I'll try to get a demo up later about the partial rendering. But indeed, it can be super efficient in that way because it knows exactly which parts of the data that you use, and it only needs to re-render that component.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, I think. Like, I haven't been using like React professionally for quite a while. Like, honestly, for like years, and I feel completely out of the loop. I know, like, just a few years back, I was using all the different frameworks, but now I'm just using none because there are too many, and I don't have to build websites anymore. No, this is a really cool development, and it works nicely with Vue as well.
Yeah, so I'm trying to load that up, and I actually also, it's not in the documentation yet, but I also added support for Svelte. Svelte, I don't know how you pronounce all those latest frameworks either. Let's see where this loads.
So overall, how much more overhead is it to make an application collaborative? Like, I mean, you just define the store, and then this is just reactive programming, right? Oh no, he's offline. I can't see him anymore. Yousef.
He's just standing very still.
Yeah, exactly. Right, I'm gonna ping him just so he knows that he's offline. Oh, okay, he already left, so he knows. All right, in the meantime, welcome back, Flavio, and also welcome, Nick.
Hello.
Okay. Yeah, you jumped right into a demo. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. Like, I've been looking forward for something like this to appear and being actually made usable. What do you think about it?
Yeah, very, very cool. Definitely useful for real time stuff.
Yeah, definitely. The only concern, I talked to him about it, because I had a look last week. Although it's very cool to to trigger the re-render only when a certain property changes, I probably would love to have a version that is not observable based, because I like observables are awesome, but like what I noticed in one project recently, combining MobX, which is observables, with useState, which is built into React, we ran into some troubles because basically there was some useState that was tricking down to other components, and then but we wrapped this components to be reactive, so only react to observables, and then basically changes were not trickling down. I don't know if this was like, I also haven't used observables much, so I don't know if we just misused it. But just the fact that this happened was like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's tricky.
I think if you really want to, you can break this pattern by using a if condition or something.
Could
Right?
be, I don't know.
Because then only part of the state is being tracked, right? But you actually want this other state to be tracked. Like, I can imagine something.
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, but I have too little experience with working with observables to.
Yeah.
I think this pattern is still tracked, but I don't know. Yeah, it would be. It's probably like half a day of trying to break it, and once you've seen that everything works, you can trust it. But yeah, that would be an interesting case. Yeah. And then also like how does it work internally if it keeps track of it? So
that is a mystery to me as well. Like this whole reactive programming pattern is a whole big mystery to me. Like, for example, hooks it's like, on the one hand, it makes everything so useful. And by the way, Yousef, you're again like frozen. For example, these hooks, they're super useful, but
it's a weird concept.
Like, it is really like, if you want to know what's going on. And I remember when I was really really new to JavaScript programming when this was developed, and I was like, all right, how does this work? And how does this work in JavaScript, right? Is there like some, like, how does it even work, right? And this is really magic. And now I understand kind of how it works. But I think like as a JavaScript developer, you should really know what's going on and like the event pattern there. And basically what these hooks and all these abstractions do is, yeah, it will just work, right? But then you hit a problem like you did, right? And this one case where it didn't work and you don't know why, right? Because this underlying technology is just too complicated and too magical.
Well, it kind of made sense. I think I know why it happened, or I'm quite certain why it happened. That's why we could actually fix it. But I don't know if like we just didn't properly use it. This is like, should you mix this use state with the reactive wrapper that prevents re-rendering or not? Or maybe this reactive rendering actually should not be used with observer. I don't know. Yeah, we just took over a code base from someone else, and yeah, basically, yeah. Then you're in the stumble in the dark, but it's definitely an issue we have to look into, and I probably can give an answer at some point. But right now, it's like just fix the one issue, move on, and tackle other stuff. Yeah, this is an interesting one.
Hey, welcome back, Yousef.
Yeah, now my computer keeps crashing. This is not our lucky day.
No, not like these are three times frozen windows in just one session. And I asked myself, why am I paying Zoom $15 a month, right, for this technology?
Yeah, why did I pay $3,000 for my laptop? That's
that's another good question.
I'm wondering.
And now I know what kind of laptop you have, because everyone buys this one.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, though.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. You want to continue, or did you have something else to say?
I'd love to continue, but there's no guarantees. Like it crashed twice in a row. So, but we can try to continue.
Sounds good.
Let's see. Here we go. So I had the view demo. Fingers crossed. Nothing break.
We just hope that it works.
Yes.
It loads, basically.
Otherwise, I found there must be a bug deep inside Chrome that is being triggered. That will be fun. So the view code is also super simple view code, and you basically just place the store on the data of your component. I have to say I'm not a view expert. And there you go. And actually, this example also has the delete functionality. So fix computer. Here we go. Put it offline, and then well, that doesn't make sense. Name it to do done, but whatever. does make sense. So other user deletes it. There you go. Well, it seems to be working. And the code is similar, so you just push things on the store, on the array, etc.
Mhm.
I think indeed you were asking, okay, what do the underlying objects look like?
Mhm.
So this is a plain JavaScript example, and it just shows the contents of the store. So this is literally, I think, the to JSON or the JSON stringify of the YDoc. And can do it this time. I have an object defined and an array, both empty. And I can just have some test buttons. Okay, I can say, okay, add some values. What it does is it pushes a property on the array or an object with a property on the array. And I can change this because it's live editable. So I can say, okay, change this, and now hopefully now reloads. And you can say, okay, puts a different property on there. So if you like, you can use this to experiment with, okay, how does it work? You can also here say, okay, set something on the object. This is the code. This is the line that sets it on sets a property on my object. So I can say, okay, color the value red. Then it's done on there. So this is what the document looks like. I might be able, so if I open up the inspector, I haven't tried this, then I need to share the inspector screen as well, of course, because I suppose you can't see it now. Put it here. You can see the inspector now, right? The Chrome. Yeah. Cool. Let's clear this because it puts here the store on the window. So yeah, and now it'd be nice if I can get the underlying document. That'll be interesting. So I need to get this import. What can do?
Well, this is not exposed, right?
No, exactly. So
okay.
maybe if I do this. Yeah. I need to reload it, I think. I thought it might be fun to dive a little bit in the YJS internals.
Mm-hmm.
Now I need to be in the right frame. Hoping it's this. Maybe have a frame.
All right. See you next time, Nick.
The audience is leaving.
No, he just needs to leave. He has an appointment or something.
Yeah, here we go. So now we have the YJS document. Can I close this? And you can see, okay, if I execute a line, okay, something that just pushes this on the array, which is done when I press this button. Now what does the doc look like? I can say doc.get array. And then what you expect, okay, my array. So this is what the YJS code would look like. Gets an array and it has length 2. So dot get 0, I think. Yeah. And then this object is actually translated into a map, into a Y map, and the second object is just a number. So here you can see, okay, how it translates to YJS things. So my guess is you'd have some questions at this moment.
No, this makes sense, right? This is basically the I mean, there's a one-on-one mapping. There's a fairly obvious mapping how you map JSON objects to YJS objects, right? There's arrays in JavaScript. You map them simply to Y arrays that are correlative. And there are objects, and you map them to Y maps. They have the same purpose, right?
Yeah.
I guess the numbers are for ordering these items around. Is that correct?
Just to show that okay, you can put a different number. So this is just a random number that
Okay.
decided, okay, you can also push that on the array. So
Okay, got it.
just to show that
Oh,
works.
this was just for the example. Got it.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you manipulate now the Y map, the state should update, right?
Yeah. So that is actually cool. So now if I have the first one, which has so this is the Y map with, let's go to state, property, that's not a very great name, but yes. So I should be able to set this to here.
Oh,
there we go.
nice.
Yeah.
So
This is super sweet.
how does that work? Are you adding a listener on any root type, basically a deep listen observer on each root type, and then updating the store? Is that kind of how it works?
So in this case, it shows the entire. So there is something similar to a deep listener in this example, but it would also work. Let's say you have a more advanced application or more close to the to-do application that I showed previously. Then indeed there is on the objects that have been accessed, there will be a deep listener attached. And when that changes, it knows, okay, this component needs to update.
Nice.
Yeah. Sounds like that system might be interesting to do a technical deep dive sometime.
It definitely makes sense. This is one of my issues with YJS when I was trying it earlier. How to keep the state in sync with React, for example. And
yeah. So I hope this helps. I'm also like really hoping some people will take or some of you, maybe if you're interested, okay, give it a go. And also if you have feedback on the documentation or it's complicated or you don't know, like, okay, you don't know how to get started, or you want to know what's happening under the hood, like hood, all this information is super nice to share, and hopefully that we can make improvements based on that.
I really appreciate that you set up this website, and the GitHub project also looks really in order. Like, this is really useful, like, to a lot of people. And I said this before somewhere, I think, to you, like, YJS, I think it is super powerful, and everything that it does is super efficient. But like, for example, like the thing that Flavio experienced is that it's really hard to observe deeply nested structures and then also map that to React structures. Like, you could just do 2 JSON every time something changes on YJS. That would work, right? But then you replace the complete state. So we want to have something that you know, does exactly what you're doing or works with immutable data structures. Like, we need some kind of abstraction around YJS if you want to use it in React, because otherwise it's just not usable.
Yeah.
That just in the command line, right? You just need to type so many characters, and you don't have any typing informations because YJS doesn't have a schema, right? It's a schema-less database.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the typings that you can provide with this interface here, that's like one thing. And yeah, it's also like really nice syntactic sugar that you can add like this. Yeah, I'm really happy about this.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, if you like, I'm not sure if we have time, I can try to about that deep observing or the automatic observing, I can try to show a little bit. We can get like a live coding to explain how that works.
We have 10 more minutes, and I think, yeah, we can use that time to maybe look through the code if you want to. If that is interesting to Flavio as well.
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah,
I gotta leave in 10 minutes, so I'm sorry
Yeah.
for that.
I'll try if I can see. So this is so really going through the code is going to be quite complex, I think, or at least in 10 minutes.
Do you have a hook or something in React that, for example, I give you a YDoc that I have,
Yeah.
and then you give me the store essentially?
Yeah, that's also possible. That's actually a good question. So maybe we can use this time to answer some questions. If you have an existing YDoc, so you can pass it in as a second parameter to SyncedStore. By default, it will create a new document, but you can pass in
Oh, I see.
that you already have.
Nice.
But even if you already have like a map or like a Y map or a Y array, you can also should also be able to use that and to even pass it into this hook. And let me think. If you pass the existing an existing item, there is also a way to convert it to the system, even if you have like a nested map and array. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly if you can pass it to the hook. Yeah. Pretty sure that this one also would take a Y doc or a Y map or a Y array, and you'll get the same functionality.
That's very nice.
Yeah. Or sorry, this one, the actual hook. Yeah. So you can give that a try. For sure. Also a tip tab example.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah, so I think here, like most of the magic is being done by YJS and tip tab, but I figured, okay, still add an example with collaborative rich text editing. So, and now it uses the fragment part that is being set on the store. And some explanations, okay, how you can use the different editors. It has support for boxed values also, so that might be a little deep dive for now, but sometimes if you want to put an object on the store and you don't want to automatically turn that into a map, you can put a boxed value on it, and it will just store the raw JSON in YJS. So that saves the performance overhead, and mainly that.
This is so cool. This is really, really cool. This is an issue that I have with a lot of approaches that simply store the JSON with a YJS document, because for performance reasons, it's often not wise to store a huge JSON blob in a value, because that will be transformed to a YJS document, and then you have like a huge YJS subdocument, and it really doesn't make sense if you don't intend to modify it. So you can just put a box around it. What? Yeah. And it automatically understands that this should be boxed. That is insane.
Yeah.
And when you get that box back, like when there's already a box in the YJS document, is this just some kind of wrapper, or how does that work?
I think if there's already if there's raw JSON in the YJS document, yes, then you get like a box value, and you should type your store also to say that it's a box of to-dos. And then you access the value. It's a little bit different, but you have to access it via the dot value property. So yeah, we just recognize, okay, hey, we get a Y array or a Y map, and it has a value or a property that is raw JSON, and it's not a Y map, and then we know, okay, we need to transform that into a box because it's the box data.
How do you tell the SyncedStore how to read this array of to-dos. So let's say you have an array of to-dos already from another client. Now you load this initial state. How do you tell it that, you know, oh, because these are just JSON objects. I'm sorry, that was dumb. No, that makes sense. This is really cool, thanks.
I think there's actually two reasons why it would make sense to box data. It's either, like you mentioned, it can be the performance overhead, but it might also not make sense in the application, right? So let's say it kind of like defines, okay, where do you want to put the granularity for collaboration? So if you have a to-do item, it's in some cases it might make sense, in some cases it might not. So basically, okay, if you have user A and user B working in the app simultaneously, does it make sense that one user changes the description and the other user checks it off? The scenario that he's fixing a typo, it's fine. In the scenario that you want to be sure that only you can only check off exactly the text that was there, it makes more sense to put the granularity of updating around the to-do in its entirety, right?
Yeah, that is a really good point. Often, and we have this kind of issue in Jupyter Lab, where we have different cell types basically, and you can change one cell type to a different type by manipulating metadata. And basically, one issue that we had is what happens when one user adds a metadata property for, you don't need to know what Jupyter Lab is, but what happens when you have like, let's say a markdown cell, then a user adds, no, if you have a code cell, and then a user adds an execution to this code cell. This can happen. But what happens when concurrently at the same time, a user modifies it to be a markdown cell instead? Now this markdown cell was executed, like this is in the metadata, right?
Yeah.
And this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So we need better granularity. Like we need to say every time you manipulate metadata, just overwrite the whole thing. I mean, maybe it's not really, you can save a bit more performance maybe if you use a YMap instead, but the advantage is that you have better granularity and you can express better what you mean. I love it. This is cool. Thanks for thinking about these kinds of issues.
Nice. Yeah, welcome. Hope that people are excited to use it. Yeah, and then there's white text support. You can also use it with MobX if you're used to that. That basically, I think that covers most of it.
Nice. All right. Yeah, thanks for making this demo. I know you didn't really prepare for this, but nevertheless, this was awesome. I'm going to share it later somewhere on the YouTube channel. Man, we have a YouTube channel and we have demos about extensions. How cool is that?
Nice.
Yeah, I invite like everyone who's listening to this. It doesn't have to be as awesome as this one, but if you want to show off something, just a small side project, jump on these community calls, and I just love to see this stuff. Like YJS has now 130,000 downloads a week, and I honestly only know about like 30 projects using YJS, which is kind of weird, right? As a maintainer, you know, so many projects using YJS, but you don't know any of them. So it would mean a lot to me if more people show up. And thanks for this. This was awesome.
All right. You're welcome.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm going to say bye because I got to leave. Thanks all for joining. This was awesome. Have a nice day.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.